Okay, so welcome, Louise. You
Thank you.
are nearly a week out of SMART practitioner training. So you attended the live training for 2 days and you were my volunteer over the weekend.
Yes.
So the purpose of this interview really is to share your thoughts, feelings, insights, and major breakthroughs by using the SMART technique.
Mhm.
And it's just really to let people know about how rapid and gets to the root cause this technique can go. So I'll just explain. So the SMART technique is somatic memory repatterning technique. We work with the body, we work with memory, and we repattern that memory so it no longer lives in the nervous system, which as adults, these normally childhood memories or current day experiences, they prevent us from doing the thing that we want to do and living the life that we want to live. So during the training, I had overheard a conversation you were sharing with your partner around a memory that was evoking some big, deep emotional
Mhm.
responses in you. So I said, can I use you as a demonstration? You were like, hell yeah, let's do it. So let's just talk through about your experience using that technique. Because I know after it, you're like, I need a moment. You're processing
Yeah.
so much and so amazed at how significant the emotional reaction dropped by doing a
Yeah.
couple of rounds of the technique. So just share your experience with us.
I think I did need to take a moment. It was a profound wow moment after the technique. I had no expectation. I didn't know how I would feel going through the technique or after the technique. So no expectations. And you had spent time talking through the process. And on the surface, it felt like a very a simple step-by-step process, moving somebody into a place where a behaviour or a memory doesn't have the same impact. So when you asked me to volunteer, initially I thought, yeah, let's go for this. But what had happened prior to that start of that process was in talking to my partner, who I was working with, there was a behaviour that we kind of identified that had had quite a huge impact on my life,
Yeah.
both professionally. So I always held this belief of I'm responsible for any situation that may not go as well as could be. So if something had gone wrong, depending on the significance of the event, it would either take me, an hour or two to think, reflect back, analyze, to think, actually, I haven't, that's not my problem to have. I haven't done anything wrong in this situation. But also, depending on the significance, that could take me days. And the more I would try to analyze, the more of this pattern I would spiral through until I came out the other end thinking, actually, I couldn't have done that any differently, or that was about the person and not me. So it quite a big impact. And we had, or through the discussion, had linked it back to a childhood memory, a childhood event. And I know that the process through the learning is that it doesn't always have to be a memory. But for me, in this dialogue, that memory came back really vividly as a 5-year-old child, came back really vividly. So that pre-talk, that pre-framing, was critical for me. Um, and in that in that 5-year-old memory, I had been made to feel responsible for adult actions. And it had been portrayed as my fault that the sequence of events had happened. So when we came to the technique and you used the technique, and through that process, you took me back to that child who felt and was made to feel responsible for something I had no control over or didn't even understand, to the present day, to being empowered into thinking, actually, that was the learning. That's not what I have to do. So I felt completely wowed when we came through the looping process, and I came out to the other end, and you said to me, how do you feel? So, an event that started off as 10, being really impactful, had come down very quickly to a 1, um, and then to a, actually, I can't remember that event. So, the vivid, what I could see, the colours, the adults, I couldn't recall any of that. Um, so it was a wow moment, and I did have to sit with it for a period of time. And through the week that since the training, um, even without any conscious thought, if something has happened in my sphere of world, um, I've not gone, what was an instant, oh my gosh, what have I done? That's not happened. So even without any conscious thought, I've been able to say to myself, or even out loud, actually, that's nothing to do with me. This is a me, this is a you thing to the person. So that, if you think about, I'm a fair old age, and I've spent decades in this mode of I'm responsible for everything as a first instinct and a feeling, um, to without even thinking about it. No, that's no, that's not me. I'm not responsible for that. So that's decades really of a pattern that's gone. And how do I explain that? Because that to me is a wow moment. That's profound. Um, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity. Um, I'm really looking forward to be able to put that into practice for other people. Um, but even though it seemed like, and it wasn't a lot, it didn't take hours. I wasn't, your guinea pig for hours. You went through the process and you looped the process. I don't know, I didn't lost track of time. Um, from my perspective, it was very easy to follow and to be guided by you. I felt completely safe in the process, and it was very easy to be guided through it. And coming out at the other end of it, um, I did have to sit with it for a couple of days, thinking from a simple principle and a simple process, decades of behaviour has gone. It's amazing.
It's amazing. Thank you for sharing that so eloquently. That was beautiful to hear. And the process, we probably worked with you for about 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
How quick it was. We only did a couple of rounds. In fact, I don't even think we did 3 rounds.
No, no, I
It's
don't
so
think
quick.
it.
So all of that emotional learning, that emotional imprinting really kind of reconsolidated itself. Um,
Mm,
there's nervous system, brain science, how it works, but it's a simple process, is the SMART technique, and it gets to the root cause. So
yeah,
had I have sat you down as a coach or therapist and said, Louise, tell me why you believe you spent your whole life blaming yourself, you would go, well, I don't know, I just have, like, yeah.
yeah. It's just me.
Yeah,
And I didn't
really.
connect any dots. And it was through, as I say, through the whole experience, because the process is one thing, the actual process of the SMART technique. Um, but the lead up to that, the dialogue, it prompted a very vivid memory for me. And I know that's going to be different for different people, and you don't actually have to have a memory. And I don't have a lot of childhood memories, but in that lead up to it, that came flying through really vividly. Colours, people, carpets, patterns just came through. Um, and then within that 15, 20 minutes, couldn't even remember it. Um, so it was really powerful, really impactful, and I genuinely want to say life changing.
Yeah.
Um, that behaviour that I've carried with me for decades in question yourself first, because you're responsible for everything that happens. You know, it, I no longer have that.
That is incredible. And sometimes when real core identity shifts happen, we can look back on our life and actually feel a bit sad
Yes.
that we've led that life. Did you feel any sense of
Yes, yes. There was a mixed feeling really, and I'm going to say it again because I've said this numerous times. It was an actual wow moment that something could, something, there is a technique that can help with all of these, trauma, how you handle trauma in the body. A technique, there's always a technique, or this is a technique that can shift somebody forward. And that's a privilege. But it did make me think, and that's where I sat in it for that period of 48 hours, where I thought how different life would have been potentially, um, if that memory of that behaviour hadn't sat so deep for so long. Um, and so there was a bit about being really grateful that actually, I've got a lot of life to live and I don't need to carry that with me. Um, but yeah, a sense of why didn't I do this before? Um, and but overwhelmingly positive
Mm.
in that. Um, yeah, my thought process is very different. Which is, yeah, I'm smiling because it's just, and I think it's something that, and I think we talked about this during the 2 days training, is something that's quite difficult to describe, because how do you describe what's happened, um, unless you have felt or experienced? And that's the power, is, the experience. And I think somebody said it in the 2 days, trust the process,
Mm.
and the process works.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Um, what type of client issues do you see yourself working in the field of?
I think it's going to be a mixture. I think, you have to be very careful. I'm very mindful that this isn't a trauma-based technique. And I am doing study around trauma, to become a trauma therapist. But this is something that, um, would have would have an impact in an unlimited way with unlimited people, because it doesn't always have to be a big memory or a big event. It can be quite subtle sometimes.
Yeah,
Until you
yes,
get to
true.
the talking bit,
Yeah.
and it's not a talking therapy, but when you start to unpick, how somebody's life is being restricted in a way, there's a negative impact. This process can work in many ways.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, people clients come with we in the industry call them limiting beliefs, but yeah, it's a client that feels blocked and restricted
Yeah,
as an adult, and they can't understand why they have a fear of being visible, why they can't go for that promotion, why
yeah.
they can't do this thing that they want to do, a fear
Mm,
or a phobia or just an inner
mm.
turmoil that they have. Um, so just interesting to know if you had come to say a talking therapy
Mm.
with the current way that you were feeling, how do you think you would have described what was going on?
In my life before the technique,
Yeah,
or
as being the problem to work on, do you think?
I would have seen that as, see, I'm talking in past tense already, which is key. I would have seen that as being very limiting, and um, being over analytical brings a lot with that.
Yeah.
When you spiral out of, oh my gosh, depending on the circumstance, in a professional capacity, if something had gone wrong, for example, I could be days thinking, wow, what have I done? So I don't think that shift would have happened so quickly or even at all with
Yeah.
the talking therapy,
Yeah.
because it's a different kind of process
Yeah.
and it's working on a different level. And if you go to a talking therapy, whether that's counselling or coaching, it takes time to get to a root cause.
Hmm.
And by the end of day one of a
Yeah.
2 day, and obviously there's the learning in the background, but the 2 day practical, you know, by the end of day one and a 30-minute process, my limiting belief, my root cause had come up and had gone. Would that have ever happened if I was sat with a coach or a counsellor? Probably not. And if so, it
Yeah.
would have been hours or weeks or even months,
Yeah. A
just
much longer process.
much longer. And
Yeah.
I think speed and the speed is quite important, because to be able to have almost an instant positive impact is quite rare. There's not a lot of therapies that you would have there.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't think I would have had the same outcome, and I certainly wouldn't have had it, you know,
Mhm.
as quickly.
No, and it is life changing because when you think about the negative effects of that spiraling, it's all consuming intrusive thoughts, it's
Yes.
energy, it's probably lack of sleep, lack of self-care. When you're up in your head, the
Yeah,
energy is,
yeah. Fear,
yeah.
anxiety.
Mm.
Even in a personal experience, I'm a mother of three. I've primarily been a single mum. So, a lot of decisions have been mine to carry. And, we know we don't get it right all of the time as a parent, but that sense of initial anxiety around this hasn't gone to plan, or this has gone really badly wrong, or this, I always work on a potential. This could have gone really badly wrong. So that fear and anxiety, like you said, sitting with you for a period of days, it impacts on everything.
All the stress hormones flooding through your body.
Absolutely. And then when I come out to the other end, and sometimes I have done things and I thought, but yeah, I could have done that better. It's not had a massive detrimental impact, but I could have done it better. And I'll do things differently. Um, but to come out of something after that ruminating, that over analytical approach, 3 or 4 days later, when you've stayed in a sense of heightened,
Mhm.
fight, flee, fight, etc., and you haven't got it, and you don't own any of it, what a waste of 3 days. Like the coming back is almost as hard as the going up
Yeah.
when you're in a state of anxiety. So yeah, this week has been very different, um, and yeah, my experience this week, I felt a shift. I felt very different, and I can't describe that, but I felt very different. And not to oversimplify the process, um, it did have a state of deep relaxation. I felt really like heavy, deep, and I had to go to bed. I went to bed after, I was in bed really early, and I slept really well that night. And the following day, which was day two of the training, I was still in that mode of what happened to me yesterday. Because I feel very different. There was a lightness. Um, so it doesn't negate from the fact that you can do it in 20 minutes, doesn't negate from the impact or the feelings, because you are at that root, you're deep in the root cause.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was amazing, and I'm just so glad. that you chose me.
I'm so glad that I came in at the right time.
Because you've had a massive impact in my life.
I'm glad to hear that.
Um, and yeah, I'm so looking forward to, obviously there's the case studies, but I'm so looking forward to spreading the word. Um, I would absolutely recommend people experiencing it.
And what's your business called, Louise? Are you up and running?
So I'm a very fledgling
Yeah.
business. And I think I said to you at the first conversation we had, coming on social media is a fear for me, and here I am
Yeah.
talking to you. Um, so that in itself has
Yeah.
a knock-on effect.
Yeah.
So my business is very simple. It's my name, and it's Mind Body Healing, because I do lots of different modalities. So I am a fledgling, but this will absolutely fit in with kind of different modalities, because there is a technique that can be adapted, not the technique, but
No,
the person, the
absolutely.
situation. And it will sit in, I do timeline therapy, I do NLP practices, I'm a coach. And I just think this fits in with all of that.
It does. It does. I'm
Um,
really excited to see the breakthroughs that you're going to make with your clients. And
yes.
hopefully, I'll get you back on and we can share those transformations.
Yeah, that would be lovely.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Louise. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, sharing your story with Smart. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks again. It was an amazing opportunity.